The current hush money scandal shows no sign of letting up, and things are looking grim for WWE founder Vince McMahon. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at everything Vince McMahon stands to lose from the scandal. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out Wrestlelamia.co.uk and our non-wrestling channel, Incredible. Well, what is the scandal? By now you've heard the details of the latest scandal involving Vince McMahon, and if you haven't heard, then we encourage you to visit our website Wrestlelamia.co.uk and our other videos investigating the story. If you haven't, the gist of things is that the WWE's board of directors uncovered a non-disclosure agreement where a former female employee was paid $3 million by Vince McMahon to hide her affair with him. The investigation reportedly led to the discovery of other non-disclosure agreements involving former female employees and alleged misconduct by Vince McMahon and WWE Head of Talent Relations John Laurinaitis. But now Mr. McMahon faces the loss of many things depending on his outcome of the investigation. Number 1, his company. Vince McMahon has watched the regional wrestling promotion he bought from his father in 1982 grow into a global promotion, bankrupting much of the competition along the way. Now McMahon faces the reality that he could lose control of his company. Vince has already stepped down as CEO and chairperson pending the outcome of the investigation into his activities, which may constitute wrongdoing. Depending on the investigation, McMahon could be forced to step down as CEO and chairperson altogether. If the investigation determines misconduct that violated the company's Articles of Incorporation or Code of Conduct, he could even be forced to sell his shares in WWE, losing ownership of the company he helped take to new heights. Number 2, his wealth. Is Vince McMahon going to end up on the streets as a homeless man? Well, highly unlikely, but he could lose a good chunk of his wealth. The first way is through the WWE stock taking a tumble. While the stock hasn't dropped too much yet after his latest scandal, it could take a substantial hit if the investigation paints him in a bad light, and even more if the WWE's higher-ups are shown to have turned a blind eye to it, particularly if current or former employees file suit alleging sexual harassment or worse. If Vince McMahon is forced to sell his stock, he may fight the move, incurring additional costs in legal bills. McMahon could also face lawsuits from people who allege misconduct and are not bound by non-disclosure agreements. Number 3, his freedom. One of the most interesting aspects of the WWE scandal is the developing story suggesting there may have been insider trading, as WWE stock was sold right before the Wall Street Journal's expose of hush money scandal in the WWE. As the WWE Board of Directors continues its investigation into McMahon's payouts to women for possible misconduct, the WWE may be facing another scandal. WrestleNomics' Brandon Thurston tweeted on 16th June, $2.1 million WWE shares changed hands yesterday, about 1.5 million more than an average day, all in before the WSJ story broke just after the market closed. It may be worthwhile to read the paragraph from the Code of Conduct headed Prohibition Against Insider Trading. And we covered this more in depth in our daily news, but to sum things up, it's unknown who made this sale transaction, but it could lead to criminal prosecution for whoever was involved. Now, we're not claiming or even speculating that Vince McMahon was involved, and again it remains to be seen if the transaction counts as insider trading. Nonetheless, the federal government has a long memory, and you can be sure that if it gets another crack at prosecuting Vince McMahon in federal criminal court, prosecutors will likely be happy to make a name for themselves and get payback on the man who beat federal prosecutors during his 1990 steroid trial and bragging about it. Number 4, his Netflix documentary. Speaking of Mr. McMahon's battle against the federal government, it appears the documentary about Vince's battles with the media and federal government in the early 90s, i.e. the steroid scandal and trial against Vince McMahon, could be shelved. First announced in 2020, the Netflix program was reportedly going to be a 4-part series which painted the WWE Kingpin in a favourable light. However, Dave Meltzer discussed the project's shaky future in light of the allegations against McMahon. The other thing too is the television show, the Netflix show that they've been working on. That changes a lot of the dynamic of that show too, because the whole show is about portraying Vince McMahon as this babyface and Phil Mushnick and others as these giant heels out to get him for all the stuff in the 90s, and it was always a weird one to me, the trial in the Justice Department and everything like that. People may have trouble sympathizing with a man accused of paying women to sign NDAs for alleged misconduct against him. Meltzer continued saying, "With this hanging over Vince's head, I don't know that Netflix wants to put a show like that on the air. It's kind of, even if Vince doesn't have to leave with the sexual allegations and everything against him, that becomes a very tricky little thing there." Now, of course, should McMahon find a way to extradite himself from this latest scandal, Netflix could always make it into a 5-part documentary. Number 5, his autobiography. Now, we recently reported on the upcoming biography of Vince McMahon by Abraham Reisman, the author of the controversial Stan Lee biography, True Believer: The Rise and Fall of Stan Lee. The New York Post later reported that Vince was shopping an autobiography to various book publishers, and we speculated that McMahon likely wanted to put out a sanitized version of his life to not only counter Reisman's book, but to cut its sales. While the Vince McMahon autobiography has not been confirmed, it's likely going to be difficult to sell unless Vince pulls a karma Houdini with his current scandal, in which case he could have a bestseller on his hands. Number 6. His marriage. A rumor has it that Vince McMahon and his wife Linda have been living apart for some time. The specifics are unknown, but it doesn't sound like an ideal marriage, and a very public revelation of Vince doling out hush money to an alleged ex-lover may be enough to push Linda to file for divorce. Number 7. His family. Vince could see his relationship with his children deteriorate further. We don't know the inner workings of the McMahon family, but the reports of Shane McMahon butting heads with his father are well known. Things heated up again earlier this year when Shane reportedly clashed with his father over Shane's plans for the Royal Rumble, and Vince dismissing most of them and allegedly relieving Shane of any role in WWE creative. As for Stephanie, her recent exit from the WWE led to speculation whether she wanted to step down. Her return as interim CEO and chairwoman has some thinking Stephanie may be on good terms with her father. In Stephanie's case, we'll have to wait and see. Number 8. His legacy. Vince McMahon has never shied away from his image as a self-made multimillionaire who went from a trailer park to the head of a billion-dollar global entertainment empire. He's also admitted being cocky, street smart, and someone willing to fight it out in the boardroom as well as in the streets. While McMahon has admitted to extramarital affairs, he's always depicted them as consensual, also seeming to imply that women were attracted to him and there was no harassment or worse. Indeed, McMahon has denied past claims of assault and harassment, although it bears mentioning that WWE did settle out of court with former superstar Sable after she filed a $110 million lawsuit after alleging harassment and unsafe work conditions. Number 9. His social standing. As trivial as this may sound, Vince McMahon could lose his social standing. Not only is McMahon wealthy, but he has a host of high-power social and political connections. This could change if the hush money allegations against him are proved, and worse, if the current investigation yields evidence of harassment or worse. If the hashtag #MeToo-like accusations against McMahon are proven, he'll likely be persona non grata in many social circles. Even people who might support him will think twice of socializing with him as he's seen as a liability. But it ain't over until it's over. Regardless of the current scandal, some feel that Vince McMahon's legendary ability to escape scandal, criminal prosecution, and certain business failure means he'll find a way out of this mess. Whether history will repeat itself depends on the results of the investigation and how it affects the WWE as a corporation. It's all about assets and liabilities when it comes to Vince's future with the company. If he's seen as a liability, it's difficult to imagine the board keeping him as CEO and chairman unless the WWE risks shareholder suits for a breach of company's fiduciary duty. Obviously, any criminal activity would lead to a temporary ouster depending on the outcome of any criminal prosecution. I don't expect Vince McMahon to back down from the allegations or possible repercussions, and his recent appearance on SmackDown suggests he'll fight tooth and claw, the same he's done throughout his life. But there you have it, folks, everything that McMahon stands to lose in this scandal. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.